We're living in the world of quantity, but Torah is about quality, about transformation.
Welcome to Prism of Torah with Rabbi Saf Aaron Prisman, engaging Divrei Torah, packed with stories and practical insights. Find us wherever you get your podcasts or at prismoftorah.org.
I would like to share with you an idea on this parsha, Parshas Lech Lecha, that is built on Rav Schwab, Zatzal, and on the Nesivos Shalom that I think will have immense impact on our practical life. Question number one. We know there was a war in this week's parsha where at the end of the war, Lot, who was part of the war on the side of Sodom, was captured, as it says in the Pasuk. And they took Lot and his possessions, the nephew of Avram, and they left, for he lived in Sodom. Now, the construction of this statement, this pasuk, is very odd, grammatically speaking. It should have said, and they took Lot, who's Lot, the nephew of Avram, and his possessions. Instead, the word, his possessions, were stuck in the middle. Lot and his possessions. And by the way, guess what? Lot was the nephew of Avram. That's very odd. Why is the pasuk doing this? Surely there's a very important message behind it. Question number two, a question that a lot of the Mefarshim asks, including the Ramban and others, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Avram right at the beginning of the Parsha, Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'memolodcha u'mibeis avicha el ha'aretz asher areka. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Avram, leave and go forth from your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house, to the land I will show you, el ha'aretz asher areka. So the question is, first of all, the order of this request that HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands Avram is out of order. When a person leaves, it makes more sense to say, first, leave your father's house. Then the bigger circle is your birthplace. And then the bigger circle is your land. This is in the wrong order. And also, it's a bit redundant. Wouldn't it be suffice just to say, leave your land and go to the land I'm going to show you? That would be way more short and to the point. There must be a hidden message here as well. And the last question I would like to ask is going back to the first point about Lot. Lot and Avraham at one point seemed to be both on the same level or close to the same level. As we know, Avraham himself references Lot, Anashim achim anachnu, we are like brothers. Meaning, it sounds like we're all both on the same level, we're righteous individuals. So what happened along the lines that Avraham Avinu later on in life became such a big tzaddik, as opposed to Lot, which Chazal tell us he was a wicked person? Ad kedei kach, it got to the extreme place that Hashem, the Midrash Tanchuma says, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was not willing to speak to Avram when Lot was with him. He had to wait till Lot departed from him, and only then the Shekhinah could dwell there and HaKadosh Baruch Hu can speak to Avram. What happened? What was the cause of this? The Nesivos Shalom answers the second question we asked in a very fascinating way. He says, you know why it seems to be in the reverse order when HaKadosh Baruch Hu requests Avram to leave, and he says it in the wrong order? First, leave your land. Your land should be last, not first. Why is it saying first your land, then your birthplace, then your father's house? Because he says, aside from HaKadosh Baruch Hu requesting him to leave those places physically, the pasuk hints to us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu requested him to leave something else as well. Leave the bad character traits you got from these three places. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, knowing the psychology of a person, he knows that he's going to start telling him what's easier to do and then kick it up a notch harder and harder. And hence, the word land, leave your land, hinted to the negative traits that Avraham inherited, that a person inherits from his environment. As we know, the Rambam tells us, a person's affected from his environment. Now, those types of negative traits are easier to get rid of because they're not literally intrinsically a part of you. They came from the outside and you leave the land and it's easier to get rid of them. But then there's a harder level, says Nesivos Shalom. And that's represented by leaving your birthplace. Birthplace represents hereditary traits that a person got from his birthplace, from his family. And those are harder. And then the hardest is something that a person got from his upbringing, from his parents, which we know Avram Avinu was brought up in a place of a lot of avodah zarah, and it wasn't easy. That's the hardest, because that's on a certain level, from a certain perspective, even more intrinsic. So that's even harder. And therefore, that is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is requesting from Avram to do. And that's why it's in this specific order. It's like an onion. There's different levels that negative traits get we get impacted by them, and slowly HaKadosh Baruch Hu is requesting Avram Avinu on his level to remove those negative traits, those negative layers of the onion. And then he'll be ready to come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is represented by El Haaretz Asher Erecha. That represents cleaving to Hashem, Dveikus b'Hashem. Like David HaMelech says, Kilvas Elokim Litoiv. That's what it's all about, getting close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But I would like to take that point of the Nesivos Shalom and elaborate on it and maybe be moisif based on different mefarshim, another idea. And before we say this idea, I'll bring a story. The story goes the following. There was a great Rosh Yeshiva in Yerushalayim who had built an incredible yeshiva over 30 years. One day, he received a message that a wealthy donor wanted to double the size of the yeshiva. But of course, on one condition. The yeshiva would need to be renamed after the donor's family. The Rosh Yeshiva's own name, which had become pretty much synonymous with the yeshiva's unique approach of learning, would have to be removed. So the Rosh Yeshiva called his closest Talmidim and asked them the following question. Tell me, when you first came to the yeshiva, why did you choose to come dafka here? The Talmidim shared various answers, but they all centered around one theme. They all said something along the lines, there's a very unique type of limud over here, unique derech halimud. There's a special approach to learning that Rosh Yeshiva has developed over decades and gave it over to us. And one Talmid even spoke up and said, Rabbi, your method of learning helped us understand that Torah isn't just about accumulating knowledge. It's about changing how we think, how we see the world. The Rosh Yeshiva, when he heard those answers, especially the last one, he nodded and said, yes, and that is exactly why I must decline this offer. You see, when we make decisions based on numbers, more buildings, more students, more recognitions, in short, kavod, honor, one of the things that take us out of this world, we're living in the world of quantity. But Torah is about quality, about transformation. If I would agree to this change, to expand the yeshiva, to have more Talmidim, for the sake of more Talmidim, I would be teaching the exact opposite of what our yeshiva stands for. I would be showing that physical growth is more important than spiritual growth. What does this story have to say with the ideas I want to elaborate on in Nesivos Shalom? We know the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that there are three main things that take a person out of this world. Motzi'im et ha'adam min ha'olam. And they are jealousy, desire, which is taiva, and honor. Now, if you look carefully, it doesn't say that they destroy a person. It says they take him out of this world. Perhaps the reason behind this is because, yes, they are still living, but they are physically living, technically and physically, maybe they're living in this world, but they are living in a totally different world, in the world of an illusion, in the wrong world. We all know that this Mishnah could easily mean, and it's machlokes rishonim, that it takes you out of the world to come. But we're now saying there's also a malach to explain that it's taking you out of this world because you're living here, but you're living in the wrong world. The world of illusion, not the world that Hashem created for you in order to achieve the world to come. You're living here, but still not in the right world. This is exactly what we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, that the Nachash unfortunately managed to impact Chava and get her to go and live the wrong world by eating from Eitz Hadas. Perhaps these three things that we're saying that take a person out of the right world and put him in the wrong world, which is taiva, the pursuit of physical pleasures, and kina, which is jealousy of others, and kavod, seeking honor and recognition. Perhaps those three agents that take us out from the correct world and to the wrong world, those are hinted to in what Hashem is requesting Avraham Avinu to do. Lech lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladetcha u'mibeis avicha. And I'll explain. Artzecha, your land, that represents material desires and comfort. First, take yourself out from there, and that's an easier step to do. Then, from your birthplace, which represents you're living with people right next to you, there's jealousy and competition we feel with our close family. And then, that's your area, your birthplace. And then, take yourself away from the agent of your father's house, which represents honor and recognition. Oh, I'm part of this family. I'm part of this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling Avraham Avinu, once you do this, then you're ready to come El Haaretz Asher Erecha, which represents, as we said in the Nesivos Shalom, to dveikus of Hashem. And that is precisely what it's all about. So we've definitely answered in different levels why HaKadosh Baruch Hu was requesting Avraham Avinu what seemed to be in the wrong order, to leave first the land, then the birthplace, and then his father's home. And now we can answer our other two questions. Rav Schwab explains, you know what happened? Why Lot and Avraham, although they were from a certain perspective, like brothers on a similar level, what changed? Because Avram worked on himself and he took himself away from these agents that were going to impact him to live in the wrong world, and he was living in the right world, not in the illusionary world, as opposed to Lot. Lot did not do that. And how do we know that? That goes back to our first question. Our first question was, why is the pasuk seem to be grammatically incorrect? And when it was talking about Lot, and it said that they captured Lot, it said, and they took Lot, and his possessions, and by the way, he was a nephew of Avram. Why are the two words, his possessions, smack in the middle? It makes more sense than saying they took Lot, the nephew of Avram. The answer is, because that is who Lot was all about, his possessions. That's what he cared about. He was with those agents of kavod. He ran after that stuff, and hence that was him. That was intrinsically part of him. Before even saying his reference to Avram, it says his possessions, even though it's grammatically wrong. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is showing us through this pasuk, that was the problem with Lot. And once you have that root, it spirals out of control. And hence, even though they were achim anachnu at one point, they were brothers. And Lot tried to go with Avram, but eventually each one went their way. Avram Avinu got to the level of Kirvas Elokim, a level that HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls him Ohavi, I love you. You're as opposed to Lot, which he gave up of going with Avram and being close with him, and he went to totally the other way. He went to Sdoim. Sdoim is the epitome of these bad agents. Practically speaking, whether we are always chasing after buying something new we really want, or feeling jealous of someone else's success and seeking recognition for our achievements, let's remember that these feelings are not just superficially challenging our midas, but rather asking a much deeper question. Which world do we want to live in? They are actually challenging our identity. Have a good Shabbos.
This concludes another episode of the Prism of Torah. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something valuable. If you did, please subscribe to the podcast and give a 5-star rating. You can also find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, or our own website, prismoftorah.com, where we have a full archive of all our past episodes. We would like to thank Yona Vefa for the recording equipment and Eli Podcast Productions for handling all our post-podcast productions. Join us next week for another enlightening conversation on the Prism of Torah.